Hi guys, welcome to this video. This video is going to be a very brief 5 or 6 minute tutorial about steep approaches in the Aerosoft Airbus 318. It's actually going to be part of a series of videos I do, but the intent is going to be to, if you like, do a lot of small brief videos that cover a certain number of elements. So this one is the Airbus 318 from Aerosoft, the recent released aircraft, and how in particular to do a steep approach. Now I've set it up for London City, which is one of the best known steep approaches, very archetypal steep approach, certainly for the UK. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the SOPs. Now the SOPs are as follows. Before the descent we have to add 8 knots to our approach speed. So I've already plugged the data in. But if we go to the performance page, blah 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 blah, approach. So we've put in our QNH 1013, 13 degrees, the wind, if you know it, 148 at 11, and the transition altitude. And the very clever system works out here that your approach speed is 118 knots. Now the first thing we have to do at this point is to add 8 knots to that speed. So that becomes 126, and we manually plug that in there. You'll notice it doesn't change the other speeds. We need to make sure we're on full config, that's the next thing, and we also need to double check our radio or barometric altitudes for decision height or decision altitude, which in this case for a category C is going to be 444 feet on the radalt. Boom, there we go, that's that done. How are we doing? We're on our way to Brain, not far left to go. So there's our descent. The next thing we need to do, now we've plugged in and programmed our MCDU, we need to make sure that we've got our, where is it, there we go, steep approach button pressed. Now, those are the only two things that we need to do before descent. Now, before we get to the descent point, which is coming up quickly, I'll, oh lovely, the tessellation of the clouds. The Aerosoft Airbus A318 runs fine on my system up until the point I put Fraps onto it, and then it decides it's going to have a real good go at it. So we're initially going to descend down to 5,000 feet for Spear, so let's get that descent going. Descending slightly early, okay. Now, when we do the approach, we've got a couple of things that we need to remember. The first thing is we've obviously got our increased V app by 8 knots. So that's the first thing. What that does is that gives us, yes, it gives us greater inertia as we go down the slope, but if you like, that reversal, if we have to do a go around and climb away, takes an awful lot of energy, so it gives us an extra little bit of safety margin there. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is when we go into our approach configuration, we will have, during the intermediate approach, we need to get ourselves fully configured. So before, you know, this bit where we're flying along level, before we start our descent, in fact, let's see if we can see it on the plan. Right, this bit here from Spear onwards is the intermediate approach. Okay, so intermediate approach goes all the way to the center fix and then to the final fix here. Now it's not a strict approach in terms of a star, but basically between the initial fix and the final fix we need to make sure the following are done. We have to be fully configured. It's our intermediate approach phase, fully configured, with the steep approach configuration established before we get to finals. The reason for that, the final approach, 5.5 degree glide slope, is a very steep descent. We will not be able to do what we need to do in the very short period of time that's available. Normally, if you're doing an ILS landing, you would leave part of your configuration till you've intercepted the glide slope. So it might be that with half a dot to go, sort of, if you think, in fact, I'll put it up for reference. If you imagine about here, quite often with half a dot to go, you'll end up with the call at that point saying gear down, flaps full, or gear down, flaps 30, whatever it might be. But your very final stage is to put all your weighty, draggy equipment out. With a 5.5 degree glide slope, you haven't got the time to do that. Because you've got such a significant change in attitude for the aircraft, that's just not going to happen. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue down now to the intermediate approach phase, and we will talk down that process fully. So I'll see you guys in a moment. Hi guys, you join me on the intermediate approach. If I just zoom this out a little bit, you'll see whereabouts we are. So here we are, we're coming down towards London City. London City is this section out here on the left with the centre fix, then the final fix, and this is the intermediate approach. So this is the area I was telling you about where we're going to start configuring the aircraft. Now, what we need to do in this stage is we need to, first of all, slow down. And one of the things we're going to help to do with that is get some gear down, get some extra drag. Okay, so steep approach configuration is as follows. Steep approach push button pressed, which it is. The next thing we need to do is make sure we get the gear down, which is in the process. We need config full and speed brake lever full. Now, interesting thing with the speed brake lever, let me find it, here we go. If I bring this to full, normally that would deploy every single speed brake that we've got. However, with a steep approach landing, actually what we get is it only affects speed brakes 3 and 4. Let me just reduce that down a bit. Only affects speed brakes 3 and 4. So if I just pop outside for a moment, you'll see that even though we've got the lever full, it's only speed brakes 3 and 4 that are affected. The reason for that is they're not there to control the speed of the aircraft as we would normally do and go, oh, we need to get down quickly. They're there primarily to provide enough aerodynamic drag that on a 5.5 degree glide slope we don't speed up too much. Why we can't extend it beyond that, because you literally can't, I'm not sure. Whether that's to do with removing too much inertia or forgetting to retract them at the lower part, or whether it's, you know, the maximum phase of it, I don't know. But there we go. You only get speed brakes 3 and 4, and even then they're only half deployed. So here's London City over here, by the way. What we're going to do is we're going to fly down here. We're then going to turn left to intercept the centre fix, and we'll do the landing from there. But there we go. There's only something like 3.43, depending on which direction, 3.4, 3.6 miles between the final fix and the actual airfield. So it's very, very quick at that point. But there we go. So continuing with our approach configuration, let's start to get the speed down a bit. Reduce our speed now to about 180. I'm going to take first stage flap. You can see our little red line here telling us what the stall speed is for the flaps. And I prefer to do the manual control of the speed because literally it affords me more direct control over what's going on. Okay, so the other things I'm going to do is I'm going to put the auto brake onto medium. Just going to check all the lights and everything are on. Stick some nose lights on and some runway turn-off lights on, although technically we don't need them. Everything else is good. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to see you guys in a moment just as we come round to this turn. There's no point following me for the next 5 miles whilst we're doing very little. Hi, welcome back guys to this hopefully third and final part. You'll have to excuse my appalling frame rates. Only I'm getting about 20 frames a second, but I've obviously got Fraps running in the background, and that takes a good 5 to 8 frames a second off my system. Now you can see the centre fix is out here on the left. In terms of aircraft configuration, you can see the landing checklist now is complete with the landing gear down, signs on, cabin ready, spoilers full and flaps full. But when you look at the system, you can see that only spoilers 3 and 4 are active down here. It's got the steep approach annunciation armed, speed brake is onto medium, and speed brake is armed and auto brake is medium with the landing lights on. So we are all good to go. All we're going to do now is we're going to go through this left-hand turn, we're going to intercept the glide slope and continue on our merry way. As I say, the criteria really now relate to the actual approach itself. So one of the things to be aware of is there are some extra additional call-outs. So the additional call-out, because of the high rate of descent, I mean a 3-degree glide slope you would normally expect for 120 knots, 130 knots, you would expect 600 to 650 feet per minute rate of descent. And your aim on touchdown is to have a rate of descent of less than 500 feet per minute. Well, in a 5.5 degree glide slope, you're not far off doubling that. So you're looking at probably 800 to 900 feet a minute, something ridiculous like that. And that's a very high rate of descent. Now, you can only do Cat 1 approaches with this. You cannot do Cat 2, Cat 3 or auto land. So you've already got that restriction in terms of the fact that a normal Cat 1 would be down to approximately 200 feet on the radalt. With this, they've also got higher minima, so this is 444 feet on the radalt. It's 460 feet, I think, on the bar alt. But you've already got a higher minima, and that's because of your higher rate of descent. So what you get is the additional call-outs of standby, flare. We're at 126, we should be. 126 knots speed, 2,000 feet, and we're going to arm the approach now. There we go. So I have to go and capture the localizer. So you'd normally get your standard call-outs of flare and retard, you know, where it goes the 50, 40, 30. But with this you get automatic call-outs which start at 60 feet on the Radalt, which are standby, flare. It's a bit of a bumpy ride in the wind this, so deep joy. Hope all the passengers in the back with their champagne are fine, but otherwise. So you get this standby, flare, which is a unique call, and obviously you get the same thing in terms of reversing your thrust levers to idle. So that's where we're at. We're just about to start the descent. Now you can see, although we're only 4.8 miles away in the 2,000 feet, it thinks we're very low. Now normally for every mile you'd have 300 feet to go, so at 4.5 miles, what's that? That's 1,200. So you'd have what, 1,350 feet you'd normally be at. We're way higher than that, and yet it still thinks we're low. So that shows you an indication of the glide slope. I'm getting a bit of a chop from the wind here. So we've got speed, altitude, localizer is captured, altitude with glide slope armed. At the moment it's saying Cat 3 single. We can't do Cat 3. We also can't do more drag, because as we said before, the speed brakes, the spoilers 3 and 4 are basically permanently out now. There's nothing we can do. So in terms of speed and drag, we are what we are. We're basically now trying to imitate a flying brick. So here we go, we nose over, and you will now see that, what's that, it's 3 miles. We're going to have a very short flight down to touchdown now. You can see a very steep angle, you can see a very different picture, but everything was set up with our 8 knots in our performance approach page. The steep approach button has added the constraints to the aircraft. It's told the aircraft of a few things. It's told it the steep approach, it's told it needs different call outs, it's told it it's going to have a different reference speed, and pretty much everything from this point on is really automatic. As I say, the key here is you cannot do Cat 2, Cat 3 or auto land approaches with this, and even when you do a Cat 1 the minima tend to be higher. So just following this down, it's a nice looking approach, it's stable, would expect it to be stable nice and early on.
100 above.
100 above.
500.
Taking the autopilot out.
Minimum.
Minimums. Landing.
400.
The wind is
300.
from the right, I think it is. It's drifting slightly to
200.
the right anyway.
Stand by.
There you go, stand by, flare.
50, 40, 30, 20, retard, retard.
Come on, get down. Right, and there we go. That's a steep approach. Get rid of the thrust reversers because we're below 60. Steep approach at London City. Hope you guys all enjoyed that, found it useful. If you have any particular requests of things you might like me to look at, then please let me know. As I say, this is going to be a bit of a sporadic series really, which is going to be based on as and when I find things that are interesting and different that might need looking at, and hopefully you guys found something useful there about doing steep approaches in the Airbus A318, and I shall speak to you guys soon. Take care.